Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. India's President Draupadi Murmu addresses a joint sitting of the Parliament, says the coming era is India's era. And this is India's century. She says that the impact of India's rise will last for the next 1,000 years. EU leaders meet at the two-day summit in Brussels to set the course for the EU's future amid pressing geopolitical challenges. US President Biden to debate with former President Trump in the first of two presidential debates before the November elections. Key issues are economy and immigration. Kenya in the grip of nationwide protests against proposed tax hikes. The country witnesses a total shutdown as protests turn violent. The inaugural address of the President of India to the 18th Lok Sabha took place on Thursday. The President addressed a joint sitting of both Houses of Parliament from the new Parliament building in India's capital, New Delhi. The President, while praising the works of the previous Modi government, laid out the path for her government for the next 5 years. Our correspondent Dibyendu Mandal gets us this report from Parliament.
President Draupadi Murmu in her ceremonial cavalcade reached the Parliament this morning to address the inaugural session of the 18th Parliament. She was received by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar and Speaker of the Lok Sabha Om Birla. The President was escorted into the Lok Sabha with the Sengol leading the procession. The President of India began her address by praising the newly elected members of Parliament. She also congratulated the Election Commission of India for successfully holding an election as mammoth as that of the scale of India.
माननीय सदस्यगण, मैं आज कोटि-कोटि देशवासियों की तरफ से भारत के चुनाव आयोग का भी आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ। ये दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा चुनाव था। करीब 64 करोड़ मतदाताओं ने उत्साह और उमंग के साथ अपना कर्तव्य निभाया है।
President Draupadi Murmu also highlighted the progress done by the Modi government over the last 10 years. She spoke on how the economy of India is growing at a rapid pace.
रिफॉर्म, परफॉर्म और ट्रांसफॉर्म के संकल्प ने आज भारत को दुनिया की सबसे तेजी से बढ़ने वाली अर्थव्यवस्था बना दिया है। 10 साल में भारत 11वें नंबर की अर्थव्यवस्था से ऊपर उठकर 5वें नंबर पर पहुंचा है।
During her address to the joint session of Parliament, the President also brought to fore the dark days of emergency and how the Constitution was curtailed during the days of emergency in India, proclaimed by the Congress government in 1975.
25 जून 1975 को लागू हुआ आपातकाल संविधान पर सीधे हमले का सबसे बड़ा और काला अध्याय था। तो पूरे देश में हाहाकार मच गया था, लेकिन ऐसी असंवैधानिक ताकतों पर देश ने विजय प्राप्त करके दिखाया, क्योंकि भारत के मूल में गणतंत्र की परंपराएं रही है।
The 45 minutes long speech of the President of India, which summarized the works done by the government and the path her government would take over the course of the next 5 years, would be put to debate and discussion in both the Houses of Parliament, as motion of thanks to the presidential address beginning on Friday. Dibyendu Mandal's report for DD India.
In a major development for the telecom sector in the country, the Indian government has begun its spectrum auction for this year on the 25th of June this year, offering 10,522.35 megahertz of spectrum valued at over 96,000 crore rupees. Now, the auction features key frequency bands like 800 megahertz, 900 megahertz, 1800 megahertz, 2100 megahertz, and more, which is all open now for major telecom companies in India. Let's take a look at this report.
On Tuesday, the government commenced the much-anticipated spectrum auction on offering a total of 10,522.35 MHz of spectrum across various frequency bands. The total auction of spectrum in this time is valued at an impressive Rs 96,238.45 crore at reserve prices. This auction aims to bolster telecom services nationwide. As on Thursday, the live auction is underway, and some of the telecom companies have already placed their bids to buy these spectrums for the service areas across the country. The spectrum bands up for bidding include 800 MHz, 900 MHz, 1800 MHz, 2100 MHz, 2300 MHz, 2500 MHz, 3300 MHz, and 26 GHz. This auction will see participation from 3 telecom giants, Bharti Airtel, Vodafone Idea, and Reliance Jio, all competing in a simultaneous multiple round ascending e-auction. The spectrum will be assigned for 20 years, with successful bidders allowed to make payments in 20 equal annual installments, maintaining an 8.65% interest rate. Notably, there will be no spectrum usage charges for spectrum acquired in this auction. Moreover, bidders will not be required to submit financial or performance bank guarantees. To ensure a smooth and efficient auction process, mock auctions were conducted earlier this month, allowing participants to familiarize themselves with e-auction platform. Yesterday, the auction catalogue was published to ensure accuracy in bidder data. This auction represents a significant step towards enhancing telecom services, fulfilling the government's commitment to providing affordable, high-quality telecom services to every citizen. Special report, DD India.
Well, the Indian Minorities Foundation on Thursday strongly condemned the United States' Commission on International Religious Freedom. That report, which it undermines India's religious freedom. The IMF had said that the USCIRF's move to position India alongside authoritarian regimes like Afghanistan, Cuba, North Korea, Russia, and China overlooked India's democratic framework, vibrant civil society, and pluralistic history. It asserted that this mischaracterization in this report undermines the USCIRF's credibility and understanding of India's religious freedom landscape. Let's move on to some other stories now. Latest developments on the European Union summit in Brussels, where leaders have convened to set the course for EU's future amid the pressing geopolitical challenges that the EU faces. The two-day summit, it comes in the wake of recent elections, as well as the Union's plans to chart out a strategic direction for the next 5 years. Let's look at this report.
Weeks after election results, the European Union leaders on Thursday gathered in Brussels for a two-day summit to finalize the strategic directions for the EU and discuss appointment of leaders for its institutions over the next 5 years, with specific emphasis on Ukraine and enhancing the EU's defense capabilities.
Here, the 27 member states will decide in the European Council, but I have already said it's also about the platform in the European Parliament that supports the Commission President, and therefore, we have reached a political understanding among these three-party families. That is just one position. We will discuss this carefully and fairly. All 27 are equally important.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is also in Brussels for the summit, marked a significant moment by signing security agreements with the European Union, Lithuania and Estonia. The agreements were inked amidst commitments of EU leaders to support Ukraine across 9 crucial areas of security and defense policies.
First of all, thanks to you and of course to all the leaders of the EU for such historic outcome. We waited for this a long period of time, yes, and everybody civilians and of course our heroes on the battlefield, you know that how we want to be in the EU. And now we see this strong historic step forward further. And thank you very much for this support and for this outcome, opening negotiations. It's very important for all of us, for all Ukraine, believe me.
Meanwhile, ahead of the summit, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia have jointly called on the European Union to fortify its eastern border with Russia and Belarus. This proposed defence line aims to shield the EU from potential military threats and disruptive activities originating from Moscow. As discussions continue in Brussels, the focus remains on shaping a cohesive strategy that not only strengthens the internal relations but also enhances the EU's resilience to external pressures. With inputs, Amish Mahajan's report for DD India.
And our correspondent Alex Kadir now joins us from Brussels with more on the story. Well, Alex, tell us more about, what's at stake in actually the EU filling up the key positions that they have.
Well, it will be the face of the European Union for the next 5 years, and that's why there is so much haggling, negotiating behind the scenes from all member states trying to get to a point of agreement. Now, we know the EU ambassadors got there just a few days ago. They reached a deal on exactly who will have the top jobs. We'll do a quick recap. Two familiar faces, Ursula von der Leyen, she stays at the European Commission. Roberta Metsola stays at the European Parliament. Now, Antonio Costa, the Portuguese Prime Minister, would come in here at the European Council, and Kaja Kallas, the Estonian Prime Minister, very, very strong in her opposition to Russia because of the invasion of Ukraine, will be the EU's top diplomat. But there have been some issues getting to that deal. Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, expressing her real frustrations that, as she describes it, the European Union leaders ignored a part of the electorate that voted for far-right parties because they came third in the European Parliament, but none of the top jobs are representing their party. That is one of the frustrations with Giorgia Meloni. Even if she opposes this, these jobs can still be assigned. But in the next few hours, we understand these leaders here at the European Council will try and hash out a deal to have all 27 countries on board for these top jobs.
Also, Alex, there seemed to be a lot of bonhomie there between the Ukrainian president and the EU leaders. So how quickly can Ukraine's accession to the Union become a reality?
Well, that accession will take about a decade. We know that Charles Michel, who welcomed Volodymyr Zelensky today, said in the past that the EU should be ready to welcome Ukraine by 2030, but ready to welcome Ukraine and actually Ukraine joining the European Union can be two different things. You're looking at about 10 years realistically. That's what a lot of the experts say on that. It is a long road. It took as long as that for other countries that joined. There are a lot of reforms still need to be done, changing Ukrainian law, changing the Ukrainian economy, and of course bringing peace to that region following Russia's invasion of their country. But nevertheless, a commitment today from the European Union with that security agreement, which will help align some of the security processes of the EU and Ukraine, a commitment for 10 years from the European Union to keep supporting Ukraine and boosting Ukraine's security when it comes to membership. That is still a long and difficult road.
Alex Kadir in Brussels, thanks very much. And still to come here on DD India News Hour. The former army general attempts a failed coup in Bolivia. And Russia is considering a possible downgrading of its diplomatic relations with the West. The US Supreme Court appears poised now to allow abortions to be performed in Idaho in cases of medical emergencies.
Nature also finds these uninvited guests quite unpleasant. Let's try to find out how to deal with these uninvited guests in the best way possible.
That you just add water to the container, and then there is a killing ingredient inside which ensures that those adults do not emerge out from that, so the force multiplier gets reduced.
The red fire ant. We need to take immediate action to prevent it from spreading further, so we can keep the red fire ant under control. The damage to agriculture is massive.
We're looking to develop pest control techniques that can be used on a large or small scale and on different plants.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the Labour leader Keir Starmer, they clashed repeatedly in their last head-to-head debate of the election campaign due next Thursday. So this debate was mainly focusing on election betting, partygate, taxation, benefits and immigration. Sunak repeatedly urged viewers not to surrender public policy to the Labour Party, while Starmer accused Sunak of being out of touch with reality.
Internal inquiry into what happened, have taken action and suspended the candidates involved, and I've been crystal clear that they should face the full consequences of the law. But Keir Starmer talks about leadership in politics. I also think leadership means being straight with people. It means having the courage of your convictions, not changing your mind on every single position that you've taken.
Last week in the Gambling Commission, we saw Partygate. Earlier in this Parliament, the Prime Minister himself was convicted and fined for breaking the rules which he brought in and imposed on everybody else. And of course, we've seen what happened with the COVID contracts and the huge amounts of money that were made. This takes leadership. What I did when one of my team was alleged to have been involved and investigated by the Gambling Commission, they were suspended within minutes.
France's left-wing parties have united for the country's upcoming parliamentary election in an effort to block the far-right's path to power. Opinion polls suggest that the anti-immigrant national rally, the RN, is riding high ahead of a snap legislative election, which is on the 30th of June and the 7th of July. President Emmanuel Macron dissolved Parliament and called these elections after his alliance was trounced by the RN in the European elections. President Macron will in fact remain president after the election, but he will have to pick a prime minister from whichever party or alliance wins a majority in the National Assembly. And the US President Joe Biden will debate the rival Donald Trump in Atlanta on Thursday at the CNN's headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. A considerable slice of the electorate remains undecided, but the elections are still, a little over 4 months away. So let's take a look at this report.
President Joe Biden will debate former President Donald Trump in the first U.S. presidential debate for the presidential election in November. This debate on Thursday, June 27th, has been organized by CNN. Last month, both candidates agreed to face off in two debates, including one this month, moderated by CNN, and the other on September 10th, hosted by ABC. CNN said both candidates will appear at a uniform podium during the 90-minute debate. Who will get which podium will be determined by a coin flip, and candidates will be given a pen, a pad of paper and a bottle of water, but they cannot use props.
So the absence of an in-studio audience and the willingness of CNN to suppress the mic of the person who's not speaking should increase the likelihood that the people who are at home watching will be able to at least hear and interpret in their own right the answers being offered by the candidates.
Campaign staff, too, will not be allowed to interact with the candidates during commercial breaks. Biden has three preferred debate topics: abortion rights, the state of democracy, and the economy. Trump's team has pointed to immigration, public safety, and inflation as key issues ahead of the debate.
But this year, because of the age of both, there is a need, even if you think you know a lot about both of the candidates, and you're more likely to this year, for you to be able to say, are they mentally acute enough to be president of the United States and mentally stable enough to be president of the United States?
Some 41% of the registered voters in a recent poll said they would vote for Trump if the election were held in June, while 39% picked Biden.
Well, you have a race that's essentially tied in the polls at this point. And so I think that puts sort of equal pressure on both of the candidates, both in terms of the opportunity the debate presents to them, but also the risks.
Here's a brief glimpse of the last debate.
Vote now. Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question because the question is radical left. Will you shut up, man?
The debate is expected to draw a live television audience in the US alone of tens of millions. It is fraught with risk for both candidates, and this is a close race.
Bureau Report, DD India.
And our correspondent Kate Fisher now joins us from Washington, D.C. with an update on the story. Well, Kate, what's expected from the debate? Reports suggest that Wall Street says they don't want any theatrics.
And they are not likely to get them, given the way this debate is going to be conducted. This is the first time a former president has debated a current president, and CNN, which is hosting it, has decided there will not be a studio audience, and they will be in control of the candidates' microphones, meaning they will mute them while the other one is speaking. And that means it's far less likely there are going to be any theatrical moments. Donald Trump loves a live audience, but he won't have one in that studio. He also likes to talk over his opponent, and as you heard in that clip just there, the last time these two men met, they were talking over each other a lot. This time they won't be able to do that because these microphones will be switched off. However, they will only be 8 feet apart. This is two men who do not like each other and have not been in the same room since the last time they debated back in 2020, yet they will be really close to each other, and that in itself is likely to add a frisson of drama. But in terms of big theatrics, it's less likely to happen under this particular debate because of the lack of audience and the fact that CNN is in control of the microphones.
Also, Kate, how much of an issue, are the personal reputations of these two leaders? Age has been mentioned. Trump's criminal charges, Biden's son's excesses.
Absolutely. There is a lot of excess around. This is not just going to be a policy discussion, that is for sure. There are all these other factors in play. Biden's age is something that Donald Trump talks about a lot, even though he himself is only a few years younger than Joe Biden. And many Americans, many voters, the only time they really see Joe Biden, unless they're really into politics, is in these snippets that are often put onto social media, and they don't always portray him in a particularly flattering way. However, this will give him a chance to show for 90 minutes that he is in command of all his faculties and that he can continue to perform on a live TV debate. And that could, if he manages that, it could quell some of those concerns. But of course, the worry is if he doesn't, if he does have a gaffe or something, then that could go viral on social media and really damage his campaign. Of course, he, for his part, will be trying to play up the fact that Donald Trump is now a convicted felon and to talk about January the 6th. Donald Trump will be trying to steer away from those issues. And Donald Trump will really be trying to say to the American people, do you want 4 more years of this, or do you want what I did, which many people say in polls that they felt they were better off during Trump's tenure as the president. And so he'll be trying to make it a referendum on whether Joe Biden has done better, whether Joe Biden's presidency has been better or not, whereas Joe Biden will be trying to say, look, this is a choice between continuing democracy or putting democracy under threat, and trying to paint Donald Trump as a threat to democracy.
Kate Fisher in Washington, D.C. Thanks very much. Now, moving on to Bolivia. Well, the Bolivian armed forces pulled back from the presidential palace in La Paz on Wednesday evening, and a general was arrested after the president, Luis Arce, slammed a coup attempt that was against the government and also called for international support. Let's look at this report.
Although the rebellion lasted only a few hours, a failed coup attempt in Bolivia could lead up to 20 years of imprisonment for a former army general. Juan Jose Zuniga, who was reportedly sacked earlier in the week from the post of the nation's army general, tried to take over the government of the South American country of 12.5 million people by leading troops and tanks to storm the presidential palace and Central Plaza in capital La Paz on Wednesday afternoon.
The people involved in the reported coup wanted to surprise us and the Bolivian people. We have reacted, and also people have mobilized against the coup attempt. Thanks to the Bolivian people.
After the soldiers taking part in the uprising retreated, hundreds of supporters of Luis Arce swarmed the plaza outside the palace in celebration. Zuniga was seen being arrested by the police. Bolivian Defense Minister Edmundo Novillo told a news conference later in the day that the armed forces were now under control.
Those responsible will have to face all the consequences, both in civilian justice and also in the realm of military justice. In that regard, I want to inform the Bolivian people about what has happened between yesterday and today with our armed forces, of which I am in command as a minister. It is due to some bad soldiers. It is a disgrace and a dark stain.
Para nuestras Fuerzas Armadas.
News of the attempted coup was roundly condemned by the international and regional leaders. The United States said it was closely monitoring the situation and urged calm and restraint, while Russia said that it hoped calm would be restored in Bolivia soon. Shortly after failed coup attempt, RC announced a new head of the Army, Navy and Air Force amid the roar of supporters and thanked countries, police and regional allies for standing by him.
It fills us with bravery, courage to keep on resisting any coup attempt, because Bolivia deserves its democracy, which has been won in the streets and with blood brothers and sisters.
Bolivia's latest political showdown comes as tensions rise over the plans by leftist former President Evo Morales to run for re-election against one-time ally Arce in general elections next year. Meanwhile, Bolivia continues to struggle with a severe economic crisis marked by dwindling foreign currency reserves, particularly the US dollar, and shortages of fuel and other basic necessities. Bureau Report, DD India.
The Kremlin said on Thursday that Russia is considering a possible downgrading of diplomatic relations with the West due to the hostile approach of the United States and its allies to Moscow in the Ukrainian crisis, though no decision has been made in this matter as yet. Kenya is in the grip of a nationwide protest against proposed tax hikes. Now, the agitations have reached a peak on Tuesday when the country witnessed a total shutdown and the protests turned violent. Police used tear gas and live rounds, in fact, on the protesters. Rahul Upadhyay gets us more.
Kenyan police put up roadblocks on streets leading to the presidential palace on Thursday as some protesters promised to occupy State House despite the president's announcement to roll back the proposed tax hikes that sparked a week of demonstrations. The anger over the tax hikes has led to the most serious crisis in William Ruto's two-year presidency. In fact, a youth-led protest movement has grown rapidly from online condemnations of the tax hikes into mass rallies demanding a political overhaul.
He didn't have a choice. He drew the bill because he knew that there's a revolution coming in this country. We were saying, if you pass the bill, you go home. So bill, go home with the bill, right? So the reason why he had to withdraw the bill, because there's so much public pressure that he cannot pass that bill. He signs that bill, he signs his death warrant.
So far, more than a dozen people have died and hundreds have sustained injuries after protesters took to the street to oppose the tax hikes on essential items. Officers fired rubber bullets and tear gas at small groups of protesters and arrested at least 7 people, with scuffles erupting as some demonstrators threw stones at police. During a nationwide address after Parliament was set on fire, Ruto said the events on Tuesday were a grave threat to national security and that the conversations around the bill was hijacked by dangerous people.
Having reflected on the continuing conversation around the content of the Finance Bill 2024 and listening keenly to the people of Kenya who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 Finance Bill.
Last week, the government scrapped some tax increases, including a proposed 16% value-added tax on bread, along with taxes on motor vehicles, vegetable oil and mobile money transfers. But the concessions have not been enough to contain protest amid the rising cost of living. Rahul Upadhyay's report for DD India.
The U.S. Supreme Court appears poised to allow abortions to be performed in Idaho in cases of medical emergencies. A court spokesperson said in a statement that a document was briefly uploaded on the court's website and that the opinion in the case will be issued in due course. The justices heard arguments in the case in April. The top court has not officially released its ruling in the case. Meanwhile, a group of anti-abortion protesters engaged in angry exchanges in front of the court. President Joe Biden's administration, which sued Idaho over the abortion law, has urged the justices to uphold that ruling. What's still to come here on DD India News Hour? We'll break down the Indian President's address to Parliament with an expert. India retains the leading position in emerging markets league table. And there's also rising visibility of Indian universities on the global stage.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. India's President Draupadi Murmu addresses a joint sitting of the Parliament and says that the coming era is India's era and this is India's century. She says the impact of India's rise will last for the next 1,000 years. EU leaders meet at a two-day summit in Brussels to set the course for the EU's future amid pressing geopolitical challenges. The US President Joe Biden will debate with the former President Trump in the first of two presidential debates before the November elections. The key issues are economy and immigration. And Kenya is in the grip of nationwide protests against proposed tax hikes. The country has witnessed a total shutdown as protests have turned violent. And going back to our story on the presidential address to Parliament, the joint sitting of Parliament by the Indian President Draupadi Murmu, we have with us senior journalist Ashok Tandon to throw light on this. Thank you very much, Mr. Tandon. So the President said that India alone is contributing about 15%, to the world's growth. And the President also said that the pace of reforms are now going to be further accelerated. So how do you view this signal to Indian entrepreneurs?
No, first of all, let me say that this is the President's first address to the joint session of Parliament after the general elections and Prime Minister Modi's third term as Prime Minister. So it was a very solemn occasion, and I think there was absolutely no disturbance from the opposition as was anticipated in a section of the media. So first of all, it's a very convention when the President addresses both houses of Parliament in the inaugural session. The President's the speech is written by the Cabinet.
Yes.
So obviously, the presidential address louts all the achievements of the government over the last 10 years and also outlines the roadmap for the next 5 years while the government will be in office. So in that context, I think the very important feature of today's address to the joint session was a mention of the Black Day of Emergency literally on the eve of 50th year. So that has not been liked by the opposition, but I think it was a necessary step on the part of the President to record it as the new Parliament, particularly the Lok Sabha, comes into the force. Now, having said that, most of the achievements which the President put before the joint session have already been discussed threadbare in the last session of Parliament, the President's address also. But certain the roadmap which the President has outlined today is about the economic development.
Yes.
As 10 years of Modi government have taken a leap forward. Now the government in the third term is going to concentrate on the economic reforms and economic development and the progress which India has made. So India is already become fifth largest economy. Now the target is to make it the third largest economy. So all the economic parameters of this government have been, taken into account in this address, apart from certain political issues and also achievements of the government and the schemes which the government have already launched. The schemes are to be carried forward. There is no let up in maintaining and carrying forward all existing schemes of the government for emancipation of the downtrodden, for the poor, for deprived section, for Adivasis, for Dalit and women emancipation. So all these things as a package which the President outlined today.
Indeed, Mr. Tandon, but of course the large emphasis of the entire speech, apart from what you mentioned, which were important political statements, but also the economic direction that the government is going to focus on in the next 5 years, taking forward the reforms of the last 10 years. But the President talked also about healthy competition among the states. And that should attract investors. This is a concept that the Prime Minister brought out when he first came in, which is called cooperative federalism. And, she also talked about the continuous efforts of reducing costs of logistics. She highlighted all India's strengths in information technology, tourism, health to wellness. These are all sound signals for foreign investors, even Indian investors, to come and invest in India.
No, it's... let me say that, the entire address, was in a way continuation of the government policies. As if it's not that the government has come to power for the first time. So it's the third term and continuation of all the policies, whether they are economic policies, whether they are social policies or economic reform, all these things. See, the continuity of the government policy was the hallmark of today's address.
Indeed. If we look at, some of the important aspects that because one of the areas that has political significance also is the agriculture sector. And she did announce, that there was a record increase in MSP for Kharif crops. She also talked about 3,20,000 crore rupees. That works out about $40 billion for our international viewers, which have been given already to farmers in form of security under the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. She also talked about the International Year of Millets. So how do you look at this emphasis in terms of the, politically also on the agriculture sector?
Yeah, no, as I said earlier, all the sectors, including agriculture sector, there has been a lot of emphasis of the outgoing Modi government on the, upliftment and of the farmers, particularly the farm sector. So even the very first decision which the government took was related to agriculture as well as to housing. So basically, I would like to come back again on the issue of reference to the emergency, because the opposition has been attacking the government that if they come to power again, they will derail the constitution or, withdraw the reservation, etc. So this emphasis not only that there will be no alteration, no change in the constitution, but at the same time reminding the opposition that what they did, their party did while imposing emergency. So this message was very important, very necessary also, and that is why there was a focus on it.
Okay, so you talk about the importance of the message on the emergency, which the President did raise. Also, the Prime Minister did raise it earlier in the last few days as well. But, we look also at the President urging the parliamentarians, they've just taken office, they've just taken their oaths to function smoothly. She also talked about, the whole system is going to develop if you function smoothly. We've seen that, we've had a lot of disruptions in Parliament over the last 10 years. Do you see this this particular round, of the 18th Lok Sabha being a lot more? You did mention the President's address went out without disturbances. Do you see that everyone's taking this more seriously?
Of course, that the President has been mentioning in her earlier addresses also, that there should not be any disruptions and there should be smooth functioning of Parliament, and for that the responsibility is of not only of the ruling party but as well as the opposition as well. So that point I think was made very loud and clear, and it has gone well, because today it was a very orderly address and there were no disruption or even slogan shouting or anything, which a section of the media was saying that perhaps they may disrupt the joint session of Parliament.
Also, Mr. Tandon, the President, as she concluded, she was talking about, this being India's century, India's era, and how its impact is going to last for the next 1,000 years. How do you see this? And also this message to fellow Indian citizens that, the time for India has arrived, and India is the nation. You mentioned really at the start also it's the fastest growing nation, but also the importance that India is contributing in a large way to global growth.
Certainly. The President also made a very specific mention of the green energy, which she says is a priority and is one of the fast-growing country, India, in this field. So the government is also focused on developing the Northeast. This was also an important one. And then she outlined the historic level of investment in infrastructure. Metro rail services have been expanded in several cities in the country. 3.8 lakh kilometer roads have been constructed in India up to the rural road scheme. So they went on listing India's, India made digital infrastructure a topmost priority. India has also, poverty alleviation has also been a top priority. A free ration scheme is being provided to 80 crore people. Under the Ayushman Bharat, over 55 crore people have been provided free health care. And today India is contributing to 15% of the global economy. Under India's leadership, the entire world has seen the International Year of Millet being celebrated. So like that. So I think even in the aviation sector, the President highlighted the achievements of India. The Yoga Day was also mentioned. So third largest aviation market in the world. So I think the President's highlight was not only in the context of what India has achieved, what India aims to achieve in the next 5 years, and that roadmap was also outlined by the President.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashok Tandon, senior journalist. Thank you for putting that into perspective for us. Now, India has retained its leading position in the emerging markets league table, achieving a composite score of 70 out of 100. This marked the 6th consecutive month that India has claimed the top spot, having held this position for 13 out of the last 15 months. Now, the country's strong export growth and stock market performance, bolstered by robust GDP growth, have contributed to its dominance among emerging markets. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has hailed the rising visibility of Indian universities on the global stage. The Prime Minister highlighted the government's commitment to quality education and providing opportunities for growth and innovation. Sharing a post on X by the Chief Global Affairs Officer of the Times Higher Education, Phil Batty, the Prime Minister said, "Great to see India's universities making strides on the global stage. Our commitment to quality education is yielding encouraging results. We will continue to support our educational institutions and provide opportunities for growth and innovation. This will help our youth greatly." Let's take you through some other stories making the news. The Central Bureau of Investigation in India on Thursday arrested 2 persons from Patna in Bihar in connection with alleged irregularities in the NEET undergraduate examination. The arrested individuals are identified as Manish Prakash and Ashutosh. These are the first arrests made by the CBI in the NEET paper leak case. The third India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission sub-working group meeting between the Indian Army and the land forces of the Russian Federation took place in New Delhi on Wednesday and Thursday. These talks focused on defense cooperation, military training, military education, and joint exercises between the two armies. In a commendable display of resilience and engineering prowess, the Army engineers from the Trishakti Corps, they have successfully erected a 70-foot Bailey Bridge on the Dikchu Sanklang Road in flood-affected Sikkim. This initiative aims to restore critical connectivity that was severed by the recent floods in the region. The DRDO successfully completed 6 consecutive development trials of the high-speed expendable aerial target, the Abhyas, that's what it's called, with improved booster configuration from the integrated test range Chandipur in Odisha. With this, Abhyas has completed 10 development trials demonstrating the reliability of the system. And still to come here on DD India News Hour. We're going to give you some news about the annual World Drug Report, which warns that the number of drug users is increasing along with the rise in trafficking across the world. And South Africa have trounced Afghanistan and reached the final of the T20 World Cup. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. As part of ongoing deployment to Africa and Europe, the Indian Navy's frontline frigate, the INS Tabar, arrived at the historic port city of Alexandria in Egypt for a goodwill visit from the 27th to the 30th of June. Now, India and Egypt, they have enjoyed a rich legacy of cultural relations and economic ties for several centuries. These bonds have continued to grow stronger in modern times, and in recent years, bilateral relations between both countries have expanded across various sectors, including defense and maritime cooperation. During the 3-day stay at Alexandria, this ship's crew will undertake a host of professional interactions with the Egyptian Navy, besides social engagements. A significant milestone for the International Solar Alliance, as the Republic of Paraguay officially became its 100th full member and launched on the 30th of November 2015 by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, during COP21 in Paris. The ISA, it aims to accelerate the deployment of solar energy globally in support of climate action. Headquartered in India, the ISA has now brought together several countries to collectively address barriers related to technology, finance, and capacity in scaling up solar energy. India is playing a crucial role in shaping the sustainable energy future by providing renewable energy solutions to the world, especially the global south. The ISA serves as a vital platform for international collaboration, uniting nations in their efforts to combat climate change and facilitate transition towards the use of solar energy on a global scale. As the world commemorated International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking on World Drug Day, the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime has released its annual World Drug Report, and it warns that the number of users is increasing along with the rise in trafficking. Here are the key findings. Well, the emergence of new synthetic opioids and a recent supply and demand of other drugs has compounded the impacts of the world drug problem, leading to a rise in drug use disorders and environmental harms. The number of people who use drugs has risen to 292 million in 2022, a 20% increase over 10 years Cannabis remains the most widely used drug worldwide, followed by opioids, amphetamines, cocaine and ecstasy, though an estimated 64 million people worldwide suffer from drug use disorders. Only 1 in 11 is in treatment. Women receive less access to treatment than men, with only 1 in 18 women with drug use disorders in treatment versus 1 in 7 men. 2.7 million people were prosecuted, in fact, for drug offenses, and over 1.6 million were convicted globally in 2022, though there are significant differences across regions regarding the criminal justice response to drug offenses.
We have seen drug abuse-related aspects and illicit trafficking in the very forefront of policy priorities in India, both from the perspective of trying the law enforcement personnel to disrupt criminal networks that operate on cross-border dimensions, including for heroin trafficking, methamphetamine trafficking, and other forms of opioids, because they are the two substances that we see more prevalent use in India. And I think the numbers on treatment of persons in treatment links us with those two main substances being substance of abuse.
Let's get you some weather updates now. The India Meteorological Department, in its latest weather forecast, informed that conditions are set to become conducive for the southwest monsoon to advance further into the remaining parts of the west, central and east India, along with certain areas of northeast India over the next 3 to 4 days. The monsoon's progress is also anticipated in additional regions of the North Arabian Sea, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and southeastern Rajasthan in the coming days. Heavy to very heavy rainfall is likely in parts of the west coast and over northeast India during the next 4 to 5 days. The Korean Cultural Center in India, in collaboration with the Korean India Contemporary Artists Association, organized a group art exhibition which was called The Eternal Resonance Between Indian and Korean Culture. It consisted of works of contemporary artists from Korea and India. The ambassador of the Embassy of the Republic of Korea in India, Chang Jae-bok, was present at the opening ceremony, and also he was the guest of honor. And this exhibition, it aims to embody the cultural homogeneity and the bond between the two countries, and also to stimulate the artistic senses of those who visit the exhibition to resonate with each other. This exhibition is part of the journey of the eternal partnership between Korea and India.
As you see, there are a lot of people coming to our Korea Cultural Center in India. So I'm very delighted to see all of them to enjoy the artworks by the two countries. As the ambassador, we are seeing the growing interest in the both Indian cultures and Korean cultures from both nations.
You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for the sports news. And in the first semi-final, it was a dominant performance with the ball, and it saw South Africa pump out Afghanistan at the Brian Lara Cricket Academy in Trinidad. On a day that many were expecting a good contest, Afghanistan won the toss and chose to bat, but they were obliterated. They didn't have a great start. The South African Quicks ravaged through Afghanistan's top order, taking 5 wickets inside of 5 overs, and they sent the opposition into absolute tatters. They were 56 all out. But South Africa's left-arm wrist spinner Tabraiz Shamsi and the pacer Macro Jansen also spearheaded the demolition of a suspect Afghanistan batting lineup. Unfortunate there for the Afghanis. And fast bowler Kagiso Rabada and Andrich Noche also maintained the relentless pressure and with 2 wickets apiece. On a surface which encouraged all bowlers but left Afghanistan with too little to defend, the South Africans lost Quinton de Kock early. In reply, he was out to Fazaluk Faruqi's wicket, 17th wicket, in fact, of the tournament for him. But Reza Hendricks and the captain Aiden Markram, they saw South Africa to victory. They hit 60 for 1 in 8.5 overs. Now South Africa has made their first ever appearance. They're going to make their first ever appearance in a T20 World Cup final on Saturday in Barbados. And they would either be playing India or England in that spot. Now Georgia made history at the Euro 2024 with a 2-0 victory over Portugal to reach their first major tournament knockout stage. Portugal had already won the group, but were shocked in their final game in the group stage after a massive loss. The 39-year-old Ronaldo had been looking to become the oldest player to score at the Euros, but was instead reduced to kicking the turf in irritation when he went off in the second half. Georgia completed the biggest Euro upset in history by beating Portugal based on FIFA rankings and created a night to remember in their debut major tournament. They will now play Spain in the last 16 and Portugal are going to take on Slovenia. Belgium are through to the round of 16 after finishing as Group E runners-up with a 0-0 draw with Ukraine, whose hopes of progress ended with a goalless ending on Wednesday. Both teams made a nervy start at the Stuttgart Arena with plenty at stake in the group as all four teams began the evening level on 3 points apiece, with Slovakia and Romania drawing 1-1 in the group's other match. All the teams ended on 4 points. Belgium finished second to Romania on goals scored, while Ukraine came fourth due to having the worst goal difference. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. And you can connect with us on Facebook, X, which was formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.